Danny Reeves had never felt so small in his entire life. The training hall stretched out before him like a cathedral built for giants, and in many ways it was. All around him stood cadets from 12 different species, each one seeming more dangerous than the last. The Dravik towered overhead with their 4 muscular arms and scales that could deflect a blade. The Kel were massive insectoid beings with natural armor plating and mandibles strong enough to crush steel. The Avith had wings that could carry them at speeds his human eyes could barely track. Then there was Danny, average height for a human, which meant short by galactic standards. Thin build from growing up on a farming colony where food was rationed. Soft skin that bruised if someone looked at it wrong. No claws, no armor, no wings, no venom. Just a human who had somehow qualified for the Galactic Defense Academy on Von 4, the most elite military training institution in known space. The other cadets gave him a wide berth, though not out of respect. They simply did not know what to make of him. Humans were new to the Galactic Coalition, barely 2 generations since first contact. Most species had been spacefaring for thousands of years. Their military traditions stretched back through centuries of refinement. Humanity was still figuring out how to work the advanced weapons without shooting themselves in the foot. Instructor Quen entered the hall, and every cadet immediately stood at attention. The Dravik moved with liquid grace despite his size, all 4 arms clasped behind his back in the formal pose of a warrior scholar. His scales were deep green with age and scars covered his hide like metals he wore permanently. His eyes swept across the assembled cadets, pausing when they reached Danny. The look said everything. Doubt, curiosity, perhaps a hint of pity. "Today you will learn close combat forms," Quen announced, his voice resonating through the hall. "Pair off by size category, but begin with basic grappling techniques." Danny found himself paired with another human named Cadet. She was taller than him, more athletic, with the kind of confidence that came from always being the strongest person in the room back on Earth. Yeah, she was just as out of her depth as Danny, but she hit it better. "Don't embarrass us," she hissed, as they took their positions on the practice mat. "The other species already think humans are weak." "I know," Danny replied quietly. They went through the motions, but Danny could feel eyes on them. The instructors were watching. The other cadets were watching. Everyone wanted to see what the humans could do. When the basic drills finished, Quen called for volunteer demonstrations. A massive K named Ralph stepped forward, his exoskeleton gleaming under the harsh lights. "I will demonstrate proper form." He clicked through his translator. Quen nodded. "Choose a partner." Ralph's eyes swept the room and landed on Danny, the human. A murmur went through the assembled cadets. Kara grabbed Danny's arm. "You don't have to," she whispered urgently. "He could break you in half." "I know," Danny said again, but he stepped forward anyway. Ralph was 3 times his size and probably 10 times his strength. The Kel species had evolved on a high-gravity world where only the strong survived childhood. Danny had grown up picking vegetables on a colony where the biggest danger was a late frost. They faced each other on the mat. Quen explained the rules. Full contact grappling, but stop at first submission or tap out. No lethal techniques. Ralph nodded his massive head. Danny just tried to keep breathing. The match started and Danny knew immediately he could not win. Ralph was too strong, too fast, too experienced. But as the kill advanced, Danny noticed something. Ralph moved in patterns, predictable ones. The training here was excellent, but it was also rigid. Every species learned their forms and followed them precisely. Danny did not have forms. Humans had barely begun formalizing their combat training for galactic standards. What Danny had was improvisation born from being the smallest kid on a colony farm, where bigger children always wanted to test themselves against someone weaker. He did not try to match Ralph's strength. Instead, he moved where the Kelm did not expect, using the larger alien's momentum against him. When Ralph reached with one of his primary arms, Danny slipped under it and swept at what passed for the Kelm's ankle. It did nothing to hurt Ralph, but it surprised him. The match ended with Danny pinned to the mat, which everyone had expected, but it had taken Ralph nearly 3 minutes, which no one had expected. Quen helped Danny to his feet, studying him with those ancient reptilian eyes. "Interesting approach. Human. Ineffective, but interesting. You do not fight like the others." "I cannot fight like the others, sir," Danny said, catching his breath. "So, I fight like me." Something shifted in Quen's expression, though Danny could not read Drake faces well enough to know what. The instructor dismissed them, and the cadets filed out toward the meal hall. Ralph fell into step beside Danny, which startled him. The massive K had not spoken to any human before. "Now oh you strangely," Ralph clicked. "Not weak, just different. Like water finding cracks in stone." "Thank you," I think Danny replied. "It reminds me of old stories," Ralph continued. "My people have legends about a species that lived long ago. They were small, soft, but they had companions who were neither small nor soft. The legends call them beast friends." Danny glanced up at the towering alien. "What happened to them?" "The stories say they disappeared in fire and war, but the beasts remembered them, waited for them." Ralph's mandibles clicked in what might have been a smile. Probably just legends. That night, Danny could not sleep. The barracks were quiet except for the various breathing sounds of a dozen different species. His mind kept returning to what Ralph had said. Beast, friends. He pulled up his datapad and started searching through the Academy's archive system. There was surprisingly little information available about the Academy's most famous tradition, the final trial. Every cadet who graduated had to face something called the Warden. The records described it as a test of courage and combat skill, but details were scarce. What he did find made his blood run cold. The Warden was a creature unlike anything else in known space. It had been discovered centuries ago on a dead world, bonded to the Academy's first founder. Its species, the Sentinels, were extinct. This one was possibly the last of its kind. Every cadet faced it before graduation. Every single one. And while no one had ever been killed, many had been injured. The Warden tested each cadet, matching their strength, their speed, their skill. It was described as intelligent, perhaps more intelligent than many sentient species. But here was the strange part that made Denny's skin prickle. The Warden had shown respect to strong warriors over the centuries. It had acknowledged skill and courage, but it had never in 300 years shown submission to anyone. Danny found a grainy image in the archives. The Warden was massive, leonine in build, but covered in armored scales. 6 limbs, each ending in claws that looked like they could tear through starship hull plating. Eyes that glowed with an eerie amber light. He should have been terrified. Instead, looking at that ancient image, Danny felt something else entirely. Something he could not name. Recognition outside the barracks window. Vorhina's twin moons cast pale light across the frozen training grounds. In a deep chamber beneath the Academy, in a place no cadet had clearance to enter, something massive stirred in its rest. Amber eyes opened in the darkness, far away across light years of space. Archaeologists on a dead world found ruins. They did not understand with symbols in a language that looked hauntingly familiar to anyone who had ever seen written human script. But none of that mattered yet. For now, Danny Reeves was just a human cadet trying to survive among aliens. Unaware that he carried in his blood the answer to a mystery 50,000 years old, the galaxy was about to remember something it had forgotten. 3 months had passed since Danny's first day at the Academy. He had learned to keep up with cadets who were faster, stronger, and tougher than him, not by matching them, but by finding his own way through each challenge. The instructors had started to notice, so had the other cadets, though their reactions varied from curiosity to resentment. Today was different. The entire Academy gathered in the ceremonial amphitheater, a massive structure carved from the black volcanic rock of Vorhan 4. This was the traditional pre-trial ceremony held every year before the graduating cadets faced their final trial. Even first-year cadets like Danny attended because watching the ceremony was considered part of their education. Instructor Quen stood at the center of the amphitheater, his forearms spread wide in the formal pose of a storyteller. Before you face the Warden, he began, his voice carrying perfectly through the space. You must understand what it is. Not merely a beast. Not merely a test. The Warden is a living connection to something the galaxy has lost. The lights dimmed and holographic images filled the air above them. A dead world, gray and lifeless. Then the image shifted, showing excavation sites in ancient ruins. 4 centuries ago, the first headmaster of this academy was an explorer before he was a warrior. He found these ruins on a world designated only by numbers. The civilization that built them had been dead for uncountable years, but in the deepest chamber, he found something alive. The hologram showed a massive chamber, and within it, suspended in some kind of stasis field, was the Warden. Even in holographic form, the creature was breathtaking. Powerful limbs, scaled hide that seemed to shimmer with its own inner light, and those eyes, those amber eyes that seemed to look through the image directly at Danny. The founder freed it, Quen continued, and rather than attack, the creature bonded with him. It became his companion, his guardian. When the founder established this academy, the Warden became its heart. For 300 years, it has tested every cadet who sought to graduate. It judges not just your strength, but your spirit. Another instructor, an Avith named Laura, stepped forward. Her wings rustled as she spoke. The Warden species were called Sentinels. We have found references to them in ruins across a dozen star systems. They appear in ancient art and fragments of text in monuments to forgotten wars, but we have never found another living one. The Warden is unique, possibly the last of its kind. Denny's hand moved to his datapad unconsciously. He had been researching obsessively for weeks now, every spare moment spent in the archives. The Sentinels appeared throughout ancient galactic history, but always at the edges, always incomplete, like pieces of a puzzle with most of the image missing. Quen spoke again. The Warden does not fight to kill, it fights to reveal. Every cadet who faces it sees themselves reflected back. If you are strong, it will be stronger. If you are fast, it will be faster. If you are clever, it will match your cunning. It shows you what you truly are. The ceremony continued with testimonials from graduates. A Dravic commander described facing the Warden 20 years ago, how it had pushed him beyond what he thought were his limits. A Kel general spoke of the honor of being acknowledged by such a creature. An Eth pilot talked about the Warden's speed, how it had taught her that true agility was not just physical. But one thing became clear as Danny listened. No one had ever truly defeated the warden. The best outcome was a respectful stalemate. The worst was being carried out on a medical stretcher. And in 300 years, the warden had never shown fear, never shown submission, never bowed to any being. After the ceremony ended, Danny did not return to the barracks. Instead, he went deeper into the archives, pulling files that most cadets never bothered with. Archaeological reports, linguistic analysis of dead languages, surveyed data from ancient ruins. He found a pattern. Sentinels appeared most frequently in records from a specific sector of space, a region that included dozens of dead worlds, civilizations that had all collapsed around the same time roughly 50,000 years ago. Whatever had happened, it had been catastrophic and widespread. But there was something else. In the few images recovered from ruins, the Sentinels were never alone. The carvings and murals showed them alongside bipedal figures. The details were always to warn or damage to be clear, but the relationship was obvious. Companions, partners, maybe family. One fragment of text had been partially translated. It was written in a language that resembled 12 different modern tongues, but matched none of them exactly. The translation was rough with many gaps, but one phrase came through clearly. They remembered the soft ones who walked beside them before the burning times. Soft ones. Danny stared at the words. Every species in the Galactic Coalition had some form of natural defense. Scales, exoskeletons, thick-hide, venom, claws. Every species except one. Humans, you should be sleeping. The voice made Danny jump. He turned to find Ralph standing in the archive entrance, his massive form barely fitting through the doorway. I could not sleep, Danny admitted. I keep thinking about the ceremony, about the warden. Ralph moved closer, his many legs clicking on the floor. You research much more than other cadets. Why? Because something does not make sense, Danny said. The Sentinels were intelligent, advanced, but they were not natural, were they? The report suggests someone created them. But who and why? And where did the creators go? The old stories of my people might have answers, Ralph said slowly. But they are considered myths, not history. Tell me anyway. The K settled his bulk onto the floor, and Danny sat across from him. Roth's mandibles moved in what Danny had learned was deep thought. In the oldest times, before my people reached the stars, we were visited by strangers, soft-skinned beings who came in ships of light. They brought gifts of knowledge, but asked nothing in return. And with them came guardians, massive creatures of great power who protected the soft ones with absolute devotion. Danny's heart was racing now. What happened to them? War came. A burning that swept across the stars. The soft ones and their guardians fought to protect our world and others. But the war was too vast. The soft ones disappeared. The guardians waited for their return, but it never came. One by one, the guardians died. Still waiting. Ralph's eyes focused on Danny. The stories say the soft ones promised to return, that one day their children would walk the stars again. You think humans are? I think you should stop researching and start sleeping, Ralph interrupted. The instructors notice your exhaustion. If they think you are not fit for training, they will remove you from the program. But Danny could not stop. Over the following weeks, as training intensified and the final trials drew closer, he spent every free moment digging deeper. He found references to a genetic marker, something the Sentinels were engineered to recognize. The files were corrupted, but the implications were clear. The Sentinels bonded to a specific type of being. Then Kara confronted him in the barracks. You are trying to cheat, she accused, researching the warden, looking for an advantage. That is not how warriors act. I am not looking for an advantage, Danny said tiredly. I am looking for answers. To what, when, to why I feel like I know that creature even though I have never seen it. To why every image I find makes something in my chest ache. To why I dream about it and wake up feeling like I lost something important. Kara stared at him like he had gone insane. Maybe he had. But then Nara landed beside them, her wings folding gracefully. The Avith had been distant before, but lately she watched Danny with an intensity that made him uncomfortable. You feel a connection, Nara said. It was not a question. My people are sensitive to such things. There is something between you and the warden, a resonance in your spirit. That is nonsense, Kara snapped. He is just a human. We are new here. We do not have connections to ancient war beasts. Perhaps, Nira said softly, or perhaps we do not know everything about humans yet. The final trials began the following week. The graduating cadets went first, one by one, entering the proving grounds to face the warden. Danny watched every trial he was allowed to observe, studying the creature's movements, its intelligence, its terrible grace. Ralph went first among the cadets Danny knew personally. The massive Kellen used pure strength, trying to grapple the warden into submission. The match lasted 20 minutes and ended with both of them standing exhausted, neither having truly won. The warden had touched its head to Ralph's chest plate, a gesture of respect. Kara fought with aggression and human determination. She lasted 6 minutes before the warden gently but firmly pinned her. She was not injured but limped away with her pride badly bruised. Nera used her speed and aerial advantage. The warden matched her in the air somehow, its powerful legs launching it in leaps that seemed to defy gravity. They danced around each other for 15 minutes before Nira acknowledged she could not win. The warden had chirped at her, an almost musical sound that seemed to convey approval. Each trial taught Danny something new. The warden was not cruel. It matched each cadet's abilities, but never exceeded them enough to cause serious harm. It was testing them, yes, but also teaching them, showing them their own limitations and possibilities. And then, 3 days before Denny's scheduled trial, an AVTH researcher named Nara's cousin arrived at the academy. She brought with her ancient documents from restricted archives, files that had been classified for reasons no one quite remembered. She showed them to the senior instructors first. Then, in an unprecedented move, they called Danny to a private meeting. When he entered the conference room, every instructor looked at him with expressions he could not read. Quen gestured to a seat. "Danny Reeves," the Dravik said slowly. "We need to discuss something we have just learned. Something about your species and something about the warden. This conversation may change everything you think you know about humanity's place in the galaxy." Danny sat down, his hand shaking. Through the window, he could see the distant shape of the proving grounds. Somewhere deep beneath it, the warden rested, waiting. Danny had not slept the night before his trial. How could he? Knowing what the instructors had told him, the documents that Nero's cousin brought had contained DNA analysis from ancient Sentinel remains found across multiple worlds. The Sentinels had been bioengineered, that much they already knew, but the genetic markers they were designed to recognize matched one species perfectly. Humans, not similar to humans, not close to humans, exactly human. Which should have been impossible because humans had only been in space for 70 years. The Sentinels had been extinct for thousands of years at minimum. The math did not work unless something was very wrong with humanity's understanding of its own history. Now, as dawn light filtered through the frozen atmosphere of Warhenda, Danny walked toward the proving grounds with an escort of instructors. Quinn walked beside him, silent. The Dravik had been given orders to stop the trial if anything unusual happened, but Danny had insisted it go forward. He needed to know. He needed to understand this feeling that had been growing in his chest since the moment he first saw an image of the warden. The proving grounds was a massive arena carved from black volcanic stone. Observation stands rose in tiers around the central floor and every seat was filled. Thousands of cadets had come to watch. Word had spread about the human who researched obsessively, who moved differently than any cadet in Academy history, who somehow made instructors nervous for reasons they would not explain. Danny stood in the preparation chamber wearing standard combat gear, a flexible suit that would protect him from cuts and bruises, but would not stop anything more serious. Everyone faced the warden in the same basic equipment. It was meant to be a test of skill, not technology. Kara appeared at the doorway. She had not spoken to him since her own trial, but now she approached slowly. "Listen," she said, and her voice was gentler than he had ever heard it. "I do not know what is going on with you and that thing, but do not do anything stupid. Okay, come back alive. That is all that matters." "I will try," Danny said. "Also, for what it is worth, I was wrong about you. You were not trying to cheat. You were trying to understand. That takes courage, too." She left before he could respond. Then Ralph entered, having to duck low to fit through the doorway. The massive kill placed one of his primary hands on Denny's shoulder. "The old stories say the soft ones and the guardians knew each other's spirits." Ralph said quietly that they did not need words because they understood at a deeper level. "If the stories are true, trust that understanding today. And if the stories are just myths, then fight well and survive. Either way, you honor yourself." Ralph stepped back. "I will be watching, small friend. Make the galaxy remember humans." Finally, Nara glided in on silent wings. She circled Danny once, studying him with those sharp Aven eyes. "You are terrified," she observed. "Yes, good. Fear means you understand what you face. But I sense something else in you too. Anticipation, almost like joy. That is what makes me think you will surprise us all today." She landed lightly. "Whatever happens in there, know that you have proven yourself already. You do not need to defeat the warden to be worthy." Then the call came. It was time. The door to the arena floor opened and Danny stepped through. The noise from the crowd hit him like a physical force. Thousands of voices, dozens of species, all focused on him. The human, the unknown factor, the strange cadet who did not fight like anyone else. The arena floor was bare stone, circular, about 100 meters across. On the far side was the deep gate, the entrance from which the warden would emerge. Danny walked to the center and waited. His heart hammered against his ribs. His mouth was dry. A horn sounded. The deep gate began to open. What emerged made every description Danny had read seem inadequate. The warden was massive, easily the size of an earth elephant, but built like a great cat made of living armor. 6 limbs moved with liquid grace, each ending in claws that gleamed like polished metal. Its hide was covered in scales that shimmered between dark blue and black, and those scales looked like they could turn away any weapon. A long tail swept behind it, tipped with a blade-like protrusion, but it was the eyes that stopped Denny's breath. They glowed amber from within, intelligent and ancient. Those eyes swept across the arena, taking in the crowd, the instructors, the setting. Then they locked onto Danny. The warden went absolutely still. The crowd's noise died away. Even the ever-present wind seemed to hold its breath. Danny stood frozen, unable to move, unable to think. He just stared into those amber eyes and felt something in his chest crack open, not break, open like a door he had not known was locked, suddenly swinging wide. The warden began to move slowly, deliberately. It crossed the arena floor toward Danny. This was wrong. Danny's mind screamed. The trial was supposed to start with a cadet making the first move, demonstrating courage by advancing. But the warden was coming to him, and its movement was not aggressive. It was careful, almost gentle. The creature reached Danny and circled him once, its massive head lowering to sniff at him. Danny's training said he should ready his weapon, take a defensive stance, prepare to fight. But his body would not obey. He just stood there, arms at his sides, looking up at this ancient being. The warden completed its circle and stopped directly in front of Danny. They were close enough now that Danny could feel the warmth radiating from its scaled body, close enough that he could see his own reflection in those glowing eyes. The creature was perfectly still, watching him with an intensity that should have been frightening. Instead, Danny felt tears running down his face. He did not know why he was crying. He did not understand the emotion flooding through him. It was too big, too old, too complicated. Loss and joy and recognition all tangled together. Then the warden did something it had never done in 300 years of testing cadets. It lowered its massive head to the ground. The gesture was unmistakable submission, deference, acknowledgement of something greater than itself. The warden's eyes never left Danny's face as it pressed its forehead to the stone floor of the arena. The silence in the proving grounds was absolute. Not a single being moved, not a single being breathed. The impossibility of what they were witnessing had frozen everyone in place. DY's legs stopped working and he sank to his knees. Now he was at eye level with the warden's lowered head. Slowly trembling, he reached out his hand. Every instructor's warning, every rule of caution, all of it evaporated. This felt right in a way nothing else in his life ever had. His hand touched the warden's scaled forehead. The creature made a sound deep and rumbling that came from somewhere in its massive chest. Not a growl, something else. Something that sounded almost like a word in a language Danny had never heard, but somehow understood. Home, the warden pressed its head forward into Danny's touch, the way a cat seeks affection from someone it loves. The scales were warm and smooth under his fingers. Danny's other hand came up automatically, both hands now cradling the great creature's head. "I know you," Danny whispered, though he did not understand how or why. "I know you. I'm sorry it took so long. I'm sorry you waited." The warden's eyes closed, and the sound it made now was definitely contentment. Pure, absolute contentment. The sound of something lost finally found. The spell broke. The crowd erupted. Cadets were shouting. Instructors were on their feet. And alarms began blaring as security protocols activated for a situation no one had ever planned for. But Danny barely heard any of it. He was focused entirely on the creature before him. This ancient being who had waited alone for longer than he could imagine. Instructor Quen's voice cut through the chaos, amplified by the arena's sound system. Everyone remained calm. "Reeves, do not move. I repeat, do not move." But Danny was not going anywhere. Neither was the warden. They stayed there, kneeling together in the center of the arena as dozens of instructors and medical personnel rushed in. Some had weapons drawn, though none dared point them at the warden. Some had scanning equipment trying to understand what was happening. The head of the academy herself descended to the arena floor. An elderly Dravik who had run the institution for 40 years. She approached slowly, her forearms spread in a non-threatening gesture. "Cadet Reeves," she said carefully. "Can you hear me?" "Yes, ma'am," Danny said, not taking his hands from the warden. "Can you move? Are you injured?" "No, ma'am, I am fine." "Is the warden threatening you in any way?" Danny almost laughed at that. "No, ma'am, it is not threatening me." The headmaster came closer, studying the scene with ancient eyes. She looked at Danny, then at the warden, then back at Danny. "In 300 years, she said slowly, "the warden has never shown submission. It has respected strong warriors. It has acknowledged exceptional skill, but it has never bowed. Not to our founder, not to legendary graduates, not to anyone." She paused. "Until you. I do not understand why," Danny said honestly, "but I know this feels right. I know I am meant to be here with it. I know it recognizes something in me." The warden opened its eyes and looked at the headmaster. It made a low chirping sound, almost inquisitive. The headmaster stepped back, her scales palling slightly. "It just asked me a question." She breathed in a language I have not heard since I was a child studying ancient texts. "It asked if you were safe." More personnel arrived. Scientists, xenobiologists, historians, even military observers from the coalition. Everyone wanted to see, to understand, to document this impossible moment. But the warden would not move from Danny's side. When someone tried to approach too quickly, it placed its massive body between them and the human, a clear message of protection. Finally, after what felt like hours, but was probably only 30 minutes, the headmaster made a decision. "Clear the arena. Everyone except senior staff. Reeves, we are going to escort you and the warden to a private facility. We need to understand what is happening here." but we will not do it in front of thousands of observers. Danny nodded. He stood slowly, and the warden rose with him, staying close. Its tail curled slightly around Danny's legs, not restraining, just touching, maintaining contact as they walked together toward the exit with dozens of instructors forming a protective perimeter. Danny looked back at the observation stands. He found Ralph's distinctive form in the crowd, found Kara standing with her mouth open in shock, found Nera with her wings spread wide in amazement. They had all come to watch him face a trial. Instead, they had witnessed something none of them could explain. A reunion between a human and a creature that should not have known each other. A reunion 50,000 years in the making. The secure research facility beneath the academy was never meant to hold a human and a war beast in peaceful companionship. It was designed for dangerous situations with reinforced walls and emergency protocols. But there was nothing dangerous about what Danny and the warden were doing. They were simply existing together, and that fact terrified the instructors more than any violence could have. Danny sat on the floor of the observation chamber with his back against the warden's side. The creature was massive enough that Danny could lean against it like a warm, scaled wall. The warden had wrapped its tail loosely around him, and one of its 6 limbs rested across Danny's legs, not pinning him, just touching him, as if it needed constant confirmation that he was real. Through the transparent wall, dozens of scientists and military officials watched. They had been watching for 6 hours now. Scanners hummed constantly, recording every heartbeat, every breath, every minute movement. Medical teams had examined Danny 3 times already, finding nothing unusual. He was just a human, average in every measurable way, but the warden would not eat. It would not leave Danny's side. When instructors had tried to separate them for testing, the creature had become agitated for the first time in centuries. Not aggressive, but distressed, making sounds that the Academy's xenobiologists described as morning cries. They had given up after 10 minutes, unable to bear the sound of such obvious pain. Instructor Quen entered the chamber, moving slowly. The warden tracked him with amber eyes, but did not move. It seemed to understand that Quen meant no harm. The Dravik sat down across from Danny, folding all 4 arms in a gesture of peaceful intent. "How do you feel, Cadet?" Quen asked. Confused, Danny admitted, but also calm. "When I am near it, I feel like everything makes sense, even though nothing makes sense." The xenobiology team has a term for what they are observing. They call it recognition bonding. The warden is not acting like it met you. It is acting like it remembers you. But that is impossible. I never saw it before yesterday. Quen's scales rippled, which Danny had learned indicated uncertainty. What if I told you the warden is not the one remembering? What if something in your genetic code remembers? Something passed down through thousands of generations. Before Danny could respond, the chamber door opened again. This time, an entire group entered. The Academy headmaster, senior scientists, military observers, and someone Danny did not recognize. A tall, thin being covered in silver fur with too many joints in its limbs. Ani, one of the oldest spacefaring species in the galaxy. The Vanny moved with the careful precision of great age. It studied Danny and the warden for a long moment before speaking. Its voice was soft but carried authority. "My name is Scholar Kana. I have spent 200 years studying what your people call precursor civilizations. The societies that rose and fell before any current species reached the stars, and I have news that will disturb many beings." Scholar Kern activated a holographic display. Ancient ruins appeared, showing architecture unlike anything in modern galactic design. These sites have been found across 47 different star systems. For decades, we assumed they were built by different civilizations. But recent analysis proves they were all built by the same species, a species that achieved interstellar travel approximately 50,000 years ago. More images appeared. Stone carvings, metal fragments, partial texts in a language that looked hauntingly familiar. We have been trying to translate their writing for a century. We failed because we were looking in the wrong place. Then, 3 days ago, a breakthrough occurred. The scholar looked directly at Danny. The language is not alien. It is the ancestor of languages spoken on Earth today. The chamber erupted in shocked voices. The headmaster raised her hand for silence. "Explain," she demanded. "Humans did not originate on Earth." Scholar Khan said simply, or rather humans originated on Earth but left it approximately 50,000 years ago. They achieved advanced technology, created an interstellar civilization and spread across dozens of worlds. Then something catastrophic happened. We call it the Burning War on our oldest records. The human civilization collapsed. Most were killed. The survivors fled back to Earth and lost everything. Technology, history, culture. They essentially started over from primitive conditions. Danny felt like the floor had dropped away beneath him. "You were saying humans were spacefaring before that. We forgot." "Not forgot. Lost catastrophically. Your species climbed to the stars, fell back to the Stone Age, and then climbed again. You were the children of survivors who lost all memory of what they once were." The warden made a low sound, and its tail tightened slightly around Danny, comforting. Another scientist stepped forward, a Draic clutching data pads. "We have been analyzing genetic samples from ancient Sentinel remains. The Sentinels were bioengineered creations of extraordinary sophistication, and we have now identified what they were engineered to recognize. She paused. A specific genetic marker present in all humans. Not some humans. All humans. It is as fundamental to your species as your DNA structure itself. Quen spoke up. You are saying the Sentinels were created by ancient humans. We are saying the Sentinels were created to bond with humans, to protect them, to serve as companions and guardians. The bond is coded into their biology at the deepest level. When they see a human, something in their genetic memory activates. They recognize what they were made for. The headmaster turned to look at the warden. For 300 years, it tested our cadets, showed respect to warriors, but it never bonded because none of them were what it was searching for. Then a human arrives at our academy, and the warden recognizes its purpose after 50,000 years of waiting. Scholar Kana brought up another image. This one showed a mural, badly damaged but still visible. It depicted bipedal figures walking alongside massive creatures that could only be sentinels. The figures were clearly human, and the scene showed not war or conquest, but companionship. Humans and sentinels together, touching, resting together the way Danny and the warden were right now. The ancient humans did not create weapons. Scholar Kern said softly. They created family. The Sentinels were intelligent, loyal, and bonded to their humans with absolute devotion. In return, the humans treated them not as tools but as partners, equals, beloved companions. What happened to them? Danny asked, his voice rough. To the Sentinels. The Burning War happened. We have fragments of records from species that existed back then. A conflict between precursor civilizations that went wrong. Weapons that destroyed entire star systems. The humans and their Sentinels fought to protect worlds caught in the crossfire. They saved billions of lives, but the cost was everything they had built. The scholar's display showed the aftermath: dead worlds, collapsed civilizations, and scattered across multiple systems. The remains of Sentinels who had died still in defensive positions, still protecting places their humans had told them to guard. The Sentinels waited. Scholar Kern continued. They waited for their humans to return. But most humans were dead, and the survivors had fled to Earth and forgotten. One by one, the Sentinels died. Alone, still waiting, still loyal, until only one remained. Every eye turned to the warden. The creature's amber eyes were fixed on Danny, and if it understood the conversation, it gave no sign. It simply existed in the moment, content to be near the human it had recognized. Danny felt tears on his face again. He turned and wrapped his arms around the warden's neck, pressing his face into the warm scales. I am so sorry, he whispered. I am so sorry you waited alone. The warden made that deep rumbling sound again. The xenobiologist had been recording all its vocalizations, trying to understand. Now, one of them spoke up, excitement clear in her voice. We have been analyzing the sounds it makes around Cadet Reeves. It is not random vocalizations. It is language, an ancient language that matches fragments we have found in ruins. The warden is trying to talk to him. Can you translate? The headmaster asked. Not yet, but we are working on it. The scientist looked at Danny. Cadet Reeves, has the warden tried to communicate with you? Have you understood anything? Danny thought about the moment in the arena when the warden had pressed its head to the ground. Yes, he said slowly. When it bowed, I felt something. Not words exactly, but meaning. It was saying home, like I was home, or it was home, both together. The scholar nodded. The bond is not just genetic recognition. It is deeper. Sentinels and humans shared a connection that went beyond language. They understood each other at a fundamental level. What you are experiencing is that ancient bond activating. More tests followed over the next several days. Blood samples, brain scans, genetic analysis. They tested Danny's parents via long-range communication, tested the 4 other human cadets at the academy, even requested samples from humans across the galaxy. The results were consistent. Every human carried the genetic marker, every single one. But only Danny had bonded with the warden. The scientists argued about why. Some thought it was about compatibility, about personality matching. Others suggested it was simply that Danny had been the first human the warden encountered. Still others proposed that something in Danny's specific genetic expression made the bond stronger. Danny did not care about the theories. He cared about the creature pressed against him. Warm and alive and content for the first time since arriving at the academy. He did not feel small or out of place or inadequate. He felt like he was exactly where he belonged. Ralph visited on the 3rd day, having to crouch low to fit into the observation chamber. The warden watched the Kalen carefully, but did not show aggression. When Ralph settled his bulk near Danny, the warden seemed to relax slightly. The old stories were true, Ralph said simply. The beast friends existed. My people remembered them through 50,000 years of history. Why did your people remember when humans forgot? Danny asked. Because it was not our tragedy. We were the ones your ancestors saved. When the Burning War came, human ships appeared above our world. They fought to protect us. Even though they were losing everything, the Sentinels died defending our cities. How could we forget beings who sacrificed themselves for us? Kara visited too, though she stayed on the other side of the transparent wall. She looked at Danny and the warden for a long time before speaking through the intercom. "I wanted to prove humans were strong," she said. "I wanted to show the galaxy we could fight like them, be warriors like them. But that was stupid, was it not? We are not like them, we are us, and maybe that means something different." I came with Scholar Kerner one afternoon. The Avith landed lightly near the warden, and the creature chirped at her, the same musical sound it had made during her trial. Nira chirped back, and the warden's tail swished with what looked like pleasure. "It remembers me," Nira said in wonder. "From my trial, it remembers every cadet it has ever tested. 300 years of memory," Scholar Kern confirmed. "The Sentinels had exceptional intelligence. They forgot nothing. Imagine living 300 years testing thousands of warriors and never finding the one thing you were created for. The loneliness would be incomprehensible." Danny hugged the warden tighter. It made that rumbling sound again, and this time the translation team thought they understood one of the words. Safe. Finally, after a week of tests and debates and shocked revelations, the headmaster made a decision. She entered the chamber alone, standing before Danny and the warden. "Cadet Reeves," she said formally, "you have completed your final trial in a manner no one could have predicted. The warden has chosen you. More than that, it has recognized you as what it was meant to protect. We cannot separate you. We will not separate you. The question now is what happens next." "I want to continue training," Danny said immediately. "I want to graduate, but not without it. We stay together." The warden's tail tightened around him, confirming. The headmaster nodded slowly. "Then we proceed with something unprecedented. You will be the first cadet in Academy history to train with a bonded sentinel. We will learn together what that means." As she left, Danny looked at the warden. Its amber eyes met his full of intelligence and ancient patience and something that looked very much like love. The wait was over. The family was reunited, and the galaxy was about to learn what it meant when humanity and the Sentinels walked together once more. 6 months had changed everything. Danny walked through the academy grounds with the warden pacing beside him, and cadets no longer stared. They had grown accustomed to seeing them together, moving in sync like they shared one mind, which in a way they did. The bond had deepened over time into something neither the scientists nor Danny himself could fully explain. He knew what the warden felt. It knew what he needed. Words had become almost unnecessary between them. Training had been adapted to accommodate their partnership. Combat drills now included scenarios where Danny and the warden fought as a unit. Strategy classes explored historical examples of bonded pairs working together. Even physical conditioning had changed with Danny, learning to move with the warden rather than trying to keep up with other species on his own. The results had shocked everyone. Danny was not a better fighter than the other cadets in pure technical skill, but with the warden he became something else entirely. They covered each other's weaknesses. Where Danny lacked strength, the warden provided it. Where the warden might struggle with complex tactical decisions, Danny guided it. Together they were formidable in ways that neither could be alone. But there was another change, one that reached far beyond the academy. The discovery that humans were the descendants of an ancient spacefaring civilization had sent shockwaves through the Galactic Coalition. Archaeological teams had mobilized to dozens of worlds, searching for more evidence, and they had found it. Ruins of human cities, technology that predated current galactic civilization, and most importantly, they had found more sentinels. Most were dead, their bodies preserved in stasis chambers that had failed over millennia, but not all. 3 more sentinels had been found, still alive, still waiting. The coalition had made the decision to wake them carefully with humans present. Danny had been there via holographic link when they opened the first chamber. The sentinel inside had been smaller than the warden, more lightly built. When it opened its eyes, confusion had been clear in its expression. Then a human scientist, a woman named Dr. Rivers, had approached the chamber. The sentinel had seen her, and the same recognition had flooded its features. When they released it from stasis, it had gone directly to Dr. Rivers and pressed its head into her hands, making soft sounds of relief and joy. Now those 3 sentinels were on their way to the academy along with the humans they had bonded with. The warden had become agitated when it learned others of its kind survived. It paced constantly, made sounds that the translation team said were calls to family. Danny could feel its excitement and also its grief, joy that others lived, sorrow for all who had not. Today, they were arriving. The entire academy gathered in the main courtyard, not for a ceremony, but simply to witness. No one knew what would happen when 4 sentinels saw each other after uncounted millennia of isolation. The transport ship landed with the kind of precision that spoke of nervous pilots. The ramp lowered and the first human emerged. Dr. Rivers was older than Danny, perhaps in her 50s, with gray in her hair and steady hands. Behind her came the sentinel she had bonded with. It was indeed smaller than the warden, built for speed rather than power, with scales that shimmered green and silver. The warden made a sound Danny had never heard before, a keening cry that cut through the air and made every being in the courtyard freeze. It was pain and joy and recognition all at once. Then the warden moved faster than Danny had ever seen it go, closing the distance to the other sentinel in seconds. They met in the center of the courtyard, and what happened next made Danny's eyes burn with tears he did not try to hide. The two sentinels wound around each other, touching foreheads, making sounds that were clearly words in their ancient language. The reunion of creatures who had been alone for thousands of years, who had believed themselves the last of their kind. The other two sentinels emerged from the transport with their bonded humans. One was built like the Warden, massive and powerful, its scales dark red. Its human was a young man, barely 20, who looked overwhelmed, but kept his hand on his sentinel side. The third was the smallest, built for climbing and agility, covered in pale blue scales. An elderly man walked beside it, moving slowly but with dignity. All four sentinels came together, and their reunion was something beyond anything Danny could describe. They touched, they vocalized, they moved in patterns that might have been a dance or a greeting ritual from their lost culture. The humans stood back watching, understanding that this moment belonged to the sentinels first. Scholar Kana stood beside Danny, recording everything. "We are witnessing something that has not occurred in 50,000 years, they said quietly. The sentinels lived in social groups, family units. They were never meant to be alone. Can you imagine what it must have been like for the Warden? 3 centuries of isolation. Knowing it was the last, Danny could imagine. He felt echoes of it through the bond. The Warden's loneliness had been a constant ache, so persistent it had become normal. Only now, reunited with others, could Danny feel the full weight of what his companion had endured. Finally, the sentinels seemed to remember the humans. The Warden returned to Danny, but its manner had changed. It was lighter, moving with an energy he had not seen before. It touched him with its head, then gently pushed him toward the other humans. Dr. Rivers smiled as Danny approached. "I think they want us to meet as they just did," she said. Her accent was British, her voice warm. "I am Helen Rivers, a xenobiologist, which feels ironic now, given what we have learned about human history." "Danny Reeves," he replied. "Cadet though, I suppose that also feels odd now." The young man was next. "Peter, I was working construction on a colony world when they found me. Still not sure this is real." The elderly man extended his hand with old-world formality. "Abraham Wolf, retired teacher. I expected to spend my last years in a garden, not bonded to an ancient warbeast. Life is strange." They talked for hours that first day, comparing experiences. Each bonding had been similar. Recognition, overwhelming emotion, a sense of rightness that defied logic. Each human reported feeling their sentinels' emotions, understanding them without words. The sentinels were clearly intelligent, but their intelligence was different from human sapiens. They thought in patterns and relationships, in emotional truth rather than abstract logic. The translation team made a breakthrough that evening by comparing vocalizations from all 4 sentinels. They had begun to decode the language. It was complex with layers of meaning conveyed through tone and pitch and rhythm, but some words came through clearly now. When the Warden touched Danny and made its rumbling sound, the translation came through the speaker. "My purpose, my human, my home." When the sentinels gathered together and vocalized as a group, the meaning was packed family together again. Over the following weeks, patterns emerged. The sentinels were reorganizing themselves into a family structure. The Warden was the eldest, and the others deferred to it in matters of importance, but they also played together roughhousing like enormous puppies. Despite their size and power, they groomed each other's scales. They slept in a pile when their humans were busy with academy duties, and the humans found themselves bonding. Helen became a mentor to Danny, teaching him things about biology and ancient history that helped him understand his companion. Peter's natural optimism kept spirits high when the weight of galactic attention became too much. Abraham's wisdom provided perspective when they struggled with their new roles. Because roles were being created, the Galactic Coalition had established something new, the Guardian Initiative. Its purpose was to search for more sentinels, to study the human-sentinel bond, and to understand what this relationship meant for humanity's place in the galaxy. Political discussions had grown heated. Some species saw humans as inheritors of advanced ancient technology and wanted to elevate their status in the coalition. Others feared what humans might become if they rediscovered their ancestors' knowledge. Still others simply wanted to study the sentinels to understand their biology and perhaps replicate it. But the humans and sentinels remained at the academy, training, learning, growing into their partnership. Danny graduated with full honors, and the ceremony was attended by representatives from 40 different worlds. He stood with the Warden beside him, and when he received his graduation marks, the Warden lifted its head and roared, not in aggression, but in pride. Every being there understood the message. This human was not alone. He had family, and that family was powerful. After graduation, Danny faced a choice. He could join a combat fleet, could become an officer commanding troops in coalition conflicts, but that felt wrong. The Warden was not a weapon, and Danny did not want to treat it as one. Instead, he accepted a position with an archaeological expedition. Teams had located what they believed was the original homeworld of the ancient human civilization. Not Earth, but the first world humans had colonized after leaving Earth 50,000 years ago. The ruins there were vast, untouched, and possibly still held functioning technology. The night before departure, Danny sat with the warden on a hill overlooking the academy. The creature's bulk was warm against his side, and twin moons cast silver light across the frozen landscape. Danny could feel contentment through the bond, but also anticipation. The warden knew they were beginning something new. "Do you remember them?" Danny asked quietly. "The humans who created your kind. The ones who were there in the beginning." The warden made a sound, and though the translator was not with them, Danny understood. Genetic memory fragments passed down through whatever served as sentinel DNA. Images of humans who walked taller, spoke languages lost to time, built cities of light and purpose, and most of all, love. The ancient humans had loved their sentinels deeply. "We will find out what happened," Danny promised. "We will learn why they fell, what they lost, and maybe, if we are lucky, we will find a way to honor what they built." The warden pressed its head against his shoulder. Danny wrapped his arms around the massive creature, feeling its heartbeat through the scales. They sat like that until dawn, human and sentinel looking toward a future none of them could predict. When the transport came to take them to the expedition site, all 4 sentinels and their humans boarded together. Helen settled into a seat across from Danny, her own sentinel curling at her feet. Peter was already asleep, his head on his sentinel's flank. Abraham sat reading, one hand absently stroking his companion's scales. "Nervous?" Helen asked Danny, terrified. He admitted, "What if we find things we are not ready for? Technology we cannot understand, answers that raise worse questions. Then we face it together," Helen said simply. "That is what they did 50,000 years ago. Humans and sentinels walking into the unknown together. We are just continuing what they started." The warden lifted its head and looked at Danny with those ancient amber eyes. Through the bond came a feeling of absolute certainty. Whatever they found, whatever challenges came, they would face it as family. And family, Danny realized, was what the ancient humans had gotten right. They had not created servants or weapons. They had created companions who chose to stay, who waited 50,000 years for a reunion. The transport lifted off from Vorhanford, carrying 8 beings toward a dead world that held secrets of a civilization lost to time. In the cargo hold, scanning equipment hummed. In the passenger section, humans and sentinels rested together, for partnerships that represented something the galaxy had forgotten, the power of bonds that transcended time, species, and even death itself. As they entered hyperspace, Danny felt the warden's contentment through their link. The long wait was truly over. The sentinels had found their purpose again, and humanity had discovered it was not climbing toward the stars for the first time, but returning to them with family by their side. Whatever came next, they would face it together, just as their ancestors had, just as the sentinels had been created to do. The watch had ended, the Guardian had found its home, and the galaxy was about to remember what humanity truly meant. The dead world hung in space like a monument to forgotten glory. From orbit, Danny could see the remains of cities sprawling across continents, their geometric patterns still visible despite 50 millennia of decay. No atmosphere remained to weather the structures, which meant they stood exactly as they had been left when the burning war consumed everything the ancient humans had built. The expedition had been on the surface for 3 weeks now, carefully excavating and documenting. Every day brought new discoveries, art that showed humans and sentinels living together in harmony, technology that still functioned after thousands of years, and everywhere signs of sudden catastrophe, buildings abandoned, personal belongings left behind, entire cities frozen in the moment their inhabitants fled or died. Danny walked through one of these cities with the warden at his side. The streets were wide, designed for both human and sentinel traffic. He could see grooves in the stone where sentinel claws had worn paths over years of use, could see benches built at different heights for different species. Everything spoke of a civilization that had integrated human and sentinel lives completely. Helen's voice crackled over his calm. "Danny, you need to see this. We have found something in the central district. Bring your partner." They found the expedition team gathered around a massive building that had been partially uncovered. It was larger than anything they had found so far, built in a style that suggested importance. A temple perhaps, or a seat of government. The entrance was tall enough for a sentinel to walk through upright. "We used ground-penetrating scans," Helen explained as Danny approached. "There are chambers beneath the structure, deep chambers, and something in them is generating a power signature." "After 50,000 years?" Danny asked. "That is impossible. So we're living sentinels until we found them," Abraham pointed out. The old teacher had proven invaluable at the dig site, his patience and attention to detail uncovering connections others missed. "Shall we venture inside?" The 4 humans and their sentinels entered together. The interior was dark, but their lights revealed walls covered in carvings, not writing exactly, but pictographic records. The story of humanity's rise to the stars told in images that needed no translation. Here, ancient humans discovering agriculture. Here, building their first cities. Here, looking up at the stars with wonder, then leaving Earth, spreading to new worlds, growing in knowledge and capability. And here the creation of the sentinels. The images showed the process with unexpected clarity. Not grown in vats, but born from bioengineered eggs raised by humans who treated them as children. bonding with specific individuals as they matured. The warden stopped before one particular carving and made a sound of recognition. Danny looked at what had caught its attention. The image showed a young human, barely more than a child, with their arms around a sentinel who was also young. Below them, symbols that the translation team had identified as meaning family and love and forever. They were not made to serve, Danny said quietly. They were made to be loved. Further in, they found stairs leading down. The power signature grew stronger as they descended. 3 levels down, they found a chamber that hummed with energy. Along the walls stood massive cylindrical structures, each one sealed and marked with warnings in the ancient human language. Peter approached one and brushed dust from its surface. Stasis chambers like the ones they found us in. But there are dozens here, maybe 100. They spread out, checking each chamber. Most were dark, their contents lost to equipment failure over the millennia, but 3 glowed with soft blue light. Active, still functioning after all this time. Abraham examined the control panel beside one. These are different from the ones that held our companions. Look at the size. These chambers are built for beings much larger than the sentinels we know. Danny felt the warden tense beside him. Through the bond came a surge of emotion so powerful it nearly drove him to his knees. Hope and fear and desperate longing all at once. The warden moved to the nearest active chamber and pressed its head against the glass, making sounds Danny had never heard before. It knows what is in there, Danny said. It knows them. Helen was already working on the chamber controls. These systems are old but remarkably preserved. I believe I can initiate a safe wake sequence. But we should discuss this first. We do not know what is inside. We do not know if it will be friendly. They are family, Danny said, feeling the warden's certainty through their bond. They have been waiting just like the others waited. We have to wake them. The decision was made to wake one chamber first carefully, with full medical support standing by. Helen worked the controls with the precision of someone who understood she was handling something irreplaceable. The chamber began its wake sequence with sounds that might have been alarms or simply old machinery coming to life. Inside the transparent surface movement, a massive shape stirring, then eyes opening, glowing the same amber as the warden's. The being inside was a sentinel, but not like the ones they had found before. This one was enormous, nearly twice the size of the warden, built for pure power. Its scales were a deep gold color, and scars covered its hide. When the chamber opened and the sentinel emerged, everyone stepped back instinctively, everyone except the warden. It moved forward, and the 2 sentinels touched foreheads. The sounds they made were beyond anything the translation equipment could process, too complex to lay it with meaning, but Danny felt it through the bond. This was the warden's parent, or perhaps sibling, family, in the deepest sense. They had been separated by the burning war, by chance and catastrophe. The warden had been on one world, this golden sentinel on another. For 50,000 years, they had been apart. The reunion lasted for hours. The golden sentinel was disoriented, struggling to understand how much time had passed. But when it saw Danny, recognition flickered in its eyes. It approached slowly, sniffing at him the way the warden had during their first meeting. Then it made a sound that the translator caught. Human, child, small one, soft friend. Over the next 3 days, they woke the other 2 chambers. Each held a sentinel unlike any they had seen before. One was built for flight with massive wing structures that folded along its back. The other was adapted for aquatic environments with fins and a streamlined body. Both showed the same recognition when they saw the humans, the same desperate joy at being reunited with family. But there was also grief. The newly awakened sentinels asked questions in their ancient language, questions the translation team struggled to interpret. They were asking about others, about specific names, about their bonded humans. And each time the answer was negative, Danny felt their pain through the warden's bond. So many lost, so many gone. That night, all 7 sentinels gathered in the central chamber. The 4 who had been awake for months and the 3 newly awakened. They vocalized together, and the sound was something between a song and a mourning cry. The humans stood apart, giving them space for their grief. How many do you think there were? Peter asked quietly. Before the war. Based on the ruins we have found, Helen said. Thousands, maybe tens of thousands. Every human settlement had sentinels. Every family. They were not rare or special. They were normal, expected, part of daily life. And now there are 7, Abraham said. 7 survivors of a species that once numbered in the thousands. The weight of that loss is incomprehensible. Danny approached the warden carefully. The creature was pressed against the golden sentinel, making soft sounds. When Danny touched its side, the warden turned to look at him. In those amber eyes, Danny saw something that made his chest ache. You want to find more, he said. You want to know if others survived. The warden touched its head to his chest. Confirmation. Over the following weeks, they explored more of the dead world. In a building that appeared to be a record center, they found a map. It showed human colonies across dozens of star systems, each marked with symbols. Helen and her team worked to translate the markers. These are not just colony locations, she announced one evening. They are nursery sites, places where sentinels were bred and raised. If any others survived, they would be at these locations. The Coalition authorized an expanded expedition. Ships were dispatched to every marked site. Most found ruins and remains, dead chambers, and ancient bones, but some found what they were searching for. 3 more Sentinels were recovered from a water world adapted for life in the deep oceans. 2 more from a high-gravity planet, built like mobile fortresses. 1 from a gas giant's moon, engineered to survive in low-oxygen environments. Each one was awakened carefully with humans present, and each one bonded. Not always immediately, not always with the first human they saw, but the bonds formed. The recognition happened, the ancient genetic programming activated, and Sentinels found their purpose again. The news spread across the galaxy. Humanity's ancient legacy was being restored, one awakened Sentinel at a time. Political discussions intensified. Some species wanted to elevate humanity to a position of power in recognition of their ancient achievements. Others argued that modern humans should not benefit from their ancestors' work. But the humans bonded with Sentinels were not interested in politics. They had a different purpose. Together, they established the Guardian Initiative, not as a military force, but as something else. A peacekeeping organization, a rescue service, a force for protection and aid across Coalition space. The Sentinels were not weapons, and their humans refused to use them as such. Instead, they deployed to disaster sites, 2 worlds in crisis, 2 places where their unique abilities could save lives. A Sentinel bonded to a search and rescue worker could dig through rubble with tireless strength. 1 bonded to a medic could carry the injured to safety. Those adapted for aquatic environments worked on water worlds, saving those trapped by floods or storms. Danny found his role in this new organization. With the Warden at his side, he led expeditions to find more Sentinels, to wake them carefully, to introduce them to the humans who would become their family. Each recovery was a miracle. Each awakening was a reunion 50,000 years delayed. By the end of the 2nd year, they had found 47 living Sentinels. It was a tiny fraction of what had once existed, but it was enough to establish breeding programs to ensure the species would survive. The Sentinels themselves took charge of this, carefully planning bonds and pairings with a wisdom that spoke to their intelligence. Danny stood in the garden they had planted on the expedition's base world, watching Sentinel young play under the supervision of their parents. The offspring were small now, no bigger than large dogs, but they would grow and they would bond with human children, creating a new generation of partnerships. Helen joined him, her own Sentinel resting nearby. "We found something else in the archives yesterday," she said. "A message. It was recorded just before the final collapse, meant to be found by whoever came after." She activated a holographic display. An ancient human appeared, their face worn with exhaustion and grief. They spoke in the old language, but the translation scrolled beneath. "To those who find this, we have failed. The war has taken everything. Our cities burn. Our children flee. We cannot save what we built, but we saved them." The human gestured, and a Sentinel appeared beside them, pressing close. "The Sentinels are innocence itself, created not for war, but for love. We placed as many as we could in stasis, hoping someone would find them, hoping they would wake to a better galaxy than the one we are leaving behind." The ancient human touched their Sentinel's head, the gesture identical to ones Danny made every day. "If you are human, if our descendants survived, know this. We loved them. They loved us. That bond was the best thing we ever created. Not our technology, not our cities, not our empire. The love between human and Sentinel. That was our greatest achievement." The message ended. Danny felt tears on his face, but he was not ashamed. Helen was crying too. So was Abraham when he joined them. Even Peter, who usually hid his emotions, wiped at his eyes. "They succeeded," Danny said. "Their Sentinels waited. They survived, and now we have them back." The Warden approached the golden Sentinel beside it. The two moved in sync, the younger learning from the elder. They had become a teaching pair, showing newly awakened Sentinels how to live in this new age, how to bond with modern humans, how to find purpose again after so much loss. Danny placed his hand on the Warden's head, feeling the familiar warmth of its scales. Through the bond, he felt contentment deeper than anything he had experienced before. The Warden was no longer alone. Its species would survive, and it had found not just a human to bond with, but a purpose that honored everything its creators had intended. A communication alert chimed. Helen checked it and smiled. "Another site has reported positive readings. Possible stasis chambers on a moon in the outer reaches. They are requesting a team." "We should go," Danny said immediately. The Warden made an agreeable sound, already anticipating the journey, always ready to find more family. Abraham observed with a gentle smile. His own Sentinel, the small blue one, chirped in agreement. They've prepared for departure over the next day. The base had become something remarkable in just 2 years. Human families lived here now, some with bonded Sentinels, others hoping to bond with newly awakened ones. Children played with Sentinel young, forming friendships that would last lifetimes. Scientists worked alongside ancient creatures to understand biology that bridged the gap between species. On the morning they were scheduled to leave, Danny walked through the memorial garden. They had built it to honor the sentinels who had not survived, whose chambers had failed, whose loyalty had ended in lonely death. Thousands of names carved in stone recovered from ancient records, each one a life lived waiting for a reunion that never came. The warden stopped before one particular name, pressing its head to the marker. The translation team had identified this one as the name of another sentinel, who had been stationed at the academy where the warden waited, a companion who had died 3,000 years ago, whose chamber had been beside the warden's, but whose systems had failed while the wardens endured. "I am sorry," Danny whispered, knowing the warden understood. "I am sorry for all of them." The warden made a sound, and this time Danny knew the meaning without translation. The grief was real, would always be real, but so was the joy of those who survived. The dead would be honored by the living, continuing their purpose, by sentinels and humans walking together again, creating the bonds their ancestors had cherished. The transport lifted off with Danny, Helen, Abraham, and Peter aboard along with their 4 sentinels. The newly awakened golden-winged and aquatic sentinels remained at the base, still adjusting to this strange new galaxy. But they would have their own mission soon enough, their own humans to bond with, their own purposes to fulfill. As they traveled through hyperspace toward the new site, Danny reflected on how much had changed. 2 years ago he had been an uncertain cadet at an alien academy, feeling small and inadequate. Now he was part of something that reached across 50,000 years of history. He had family in the form of a massive war beast who would die to protect him. He had purpose in reuniting an ancient partnership that had been torn apart by catastrophe. The galaxy had changed. Humans were no longer seen as newcomers or curiosities. They were recognized as the inheritors of an ancient legacy. Yes, but more importantly, as the partners of the Sentinels. Other species watched with interest as the bonds reformed, as the Guardian Initiative grew, as humans and Sentinels proved what cooperation across species lines could achieve. The transport dropped out of hyperspace near a small moon orbiting a gas giant. Scans confirmed what the survey team had reported. Deep beneath the surface, power signatures indicated active stasis chambers, at least 6 of them. They landed near the excavation site where local teams had been carefully uncovering an entrance to an underground facility. This one was different from others they had found. It was deep, protected by layers of rock and ancient security systems that still functioned. The original builders had hidden this place deliberately, protecting it from whatever had destroyed their civilization. As they descended into the facility with their sentinels, Danny felt the warden's anticipation growing. This place was significant somehow. The ancient structure spoke of importance, of secrets kept safe through ages of darkness. They found the chamber at the lowest level, 6 stasis units arranged in a circle, all active, all containing sentinels. But these were different again, smaller than any they had found before, built with elegant proportions and scales that shimmered with iridescent colors. Helen studied the control panels. According to the records here, these are specialized sentinels. The ancient term translates roughly to soul singers or heart speakers. They were bonded to humans who worked in counseling and healing emotional rather than physical wounds. Therapy, we would call it now, sentinels for mental health workers. Peter said, "That is beautiful." They began the wake sequence for the first chamber. When it opened, the sentinel inside uncurled with movements like a dancer. Its scales shifted through colors as it oriented itself, perhaps reflecting its emotional state. When it saw the humans, those scales settled into warm golds and soft blues. This sentinel did not approach aggressively or cautiously. It simply walked to Helen and sat before her, looking up with eyes full of ancient wisdom. When Helen reached out, the sentinel began to hum. The sound was musical, resonating in a way that made every human present feel suddenly calm, centered, at peace. "Oh," Helen breathed. "I understand. They do not just bond emotionally. They help regulate human emotions. They were companions to those who carried others' burdens, who healed others' pain. They kept their humans balanced." They woke the other 5 carefully, each bonded within hours, not to the expedition team, but to support staff they contacted from the base. A human counselor arrived and bonded with one immediately. A teacher who worked with traumatized children bonded with another. Each human found their match, and each sentinel found their purpose restored. The discoveries continued over the following months. They found sentinels adapted for every human need imaginable, companions for artists bonded to help channel creativity, partners for engineers with an intuitive understanding of spatial relationships, guardians for children, gentle and patient and absolutely protective. Each new awakening expanded understanding of what the ancient humans had achieved. They had not just created powerful warriors, they had created companions perfectly suited to every aspect of human life. The sentinels were not tools but family members, each one designed to complement and enhance their human partner's natural abilities. 3 years after Danny first faced the Warden in the Proving Grounds, the Guardian Initiative held its first formal assembly. Over 200 sentinels and their bonded humans gathered on the base world. Some had been awake for years, others for mere weeks. All were finding their place in this new galaxy. Danny stood before them, the Warden at his side as always. He had been asked to speak, to represent the initiative to the assembled crowd and the galactic observers watching remotely. 3 years ago I was a cadet who felt inadequate in every way, he began. I was not as strong as other species, not as fast, not as naturally equipped for the challenges I faced. Then I met the Warden, and everything changed, not because it made me stronger, but because it made me complete. The Warden pressed its head against his side, and Danny placed his hand on it instinctively. Our ancestors understood something the modern galaxy had forgotten. True strength is not individual, it is collective. It is found in bonds between beings who choose to stand together. They created the Sentinels not as servants or weapons, but as family, and in doing so, they created something that survived the fall of civilizations, the death of worlds, and 50,000 years of waiting. He looked around at the assembled pairs, human and sentinel, young and old, experienced and new, each partnership unique, each bond as strong as the ancient ones. We are not trying to rebuild what was lost. We cannot. Too much time has passed. Too much has changed. Instead, we are building something new on the foundation our ancestors left us. We are showing the galaxy what partnership truly means, what love across species can achieve, what loyalty and devotion look like when they transcend time itself. The Sentinels vocalized together, a sound that had not been heard in 50 millennia. The song of a species reunited with its purpose, with its family, with the beings they were created to love and protect. The burning war took everything from our ancestors, Danny continued, but it could not take the bonds they forged. Those bonds waited in stasis, patient and loyal, until we found them again. Now we honor our ancestors, not by mourning what was lost, but by celebrating what survived, by walking forward together, human and sentinel, into whatever future we create. He paused, feeling the weight of history and hope balanced together. The ancient humans promised their sentinels that someone would return, that their children would walk the stars again. We kept that promise even though we did not know we were making it. And now together we keep a new promise, that these bonds will never be broken again, that we will remember what was forgotten, that we will be worthy of the love that waited 50,000 years for us. The assembly erupted in sound, human voices and sentinel songs blending together in affirmation. The Warden lifted its head and roared, and every sentinel joined the call. The sound echoed across the base, across the planet, and in the hearts of every being who heard it. Later that evening, Danny sat with the Warden under an alien sky, watching stars that ancient humans had once traveled between. The creature was content, radiating peace through their bond. Around them, other human sentinel pairs rested together, creating a community that bridged time and species and the vast darkness between stars. Ralph had sent a message earlier congratulating Danny on the speech. The massive kill had become an ambassador for the Guardian Initiative, sharing the story with his people and others. The old legends were being vindicated, and those who had kept the stories alive felt honored to see them proven true. Kara had found her own path. She led recovery teams that searched for more sentinels, her determination and courage making her perfect for the dangerous work. She had not bonded herself, preferring to help others find their partners. Neera documented everything, creating a comprehensive history of the rediscovered bonds. Her work ensured that this time the story would not be lost. Future generations would know what their ancestors achieved and what had been restored. Even Instructor Quinn had admitted his The old Dravik visited the base regularly, studying the human sentinel partnerships with academic interests that had grown into genuine respect. He had written papers on combat tactics using bonded pairs, revolutionizing coalition military thinking. The galaxy was learning slowly, sometimes reluctantly, but learning. Humans were not weak or inadequate. They were different, suited to partnership rather than solo dominance, and in that difference lay a strength that transcended individual capability. Danny looked at the Warden, this ancient being who had waited 3 centuries for someone like him. "Are you happy?" he asked quietly. The Warden's eyes glowed amber in the darkness. Through the bond came a feeling so powerful and clear that it needed no translation. Complete contentment, perfect fulfillment, the joy of purpose restored and family reunited. Yes, the Warden conveyed, after 50,000 years of waiting, after centuries of loneliness, after testing thousands of warriors who were not what it sought, the wait was over. It had found its human, its purpose, its home, and in finding that home, it had helped an entire species remember what their ancestors had known, that the greatest achievements are not technological or military. They are the bonds we forge with those who choose to stand beside us, the love we share with those different from ourselves, the loyalty that transcends time, death, and the fall of empires. The Warden had taught the galaxy this lesson simply by waiting, by refusing to give up hope, even when all seemed lost, by remembering what others had forgotten. Danny leaned against his companion, feeling its heartbeat through the warm scales. Around them, sentinels and humans rested together under alien stars, creating a future built on the foundation of an ancient love. The long watch had ended. The Guardians had found their purpose, and humanity had discovered that coming home sometimes means finding family you never knew you had lost. In the darkness above, ships carrying expedition teams traveled to new sites. searching for more sentinels still waiting in their patient sleep. Each one would wake to a human ready to bond, ready to love, ready to honor the purpose for which they were created. The galaxy had changed. It would never be the same, because 50,000 years ago, a civilization had loved so deeply that they created companions designed to last beyond the end of worlds. And that love, encoded in genetics and preserved in stasis, had survived to teach a new age what true partnership meant. Danny closed his eyes, feeling the warden's contentment merge with his own. Tomorrow they would search for more survivors. Tomorrow they would continue building this new future. But tonight they simply existed together, human and sentinel, exactly as their ancestors had done on worlds that no longer existed. The bond was complete. The circle was closed, and the promise made 50,000 years ago was finally completely fulfilled.